We are back with Marco Rubio, a Republican candidate for Senate here in Florida. Governor Christ bowed out of the race this week, said he's going to run as an independent. You're now running as a Republican all by yourself. So you're going to be the Republican nominee, it seems like, for the U.S. Senate seat. Michael Steele, who you know well, runs the RNC, and he said there is, quote, a real possibility that Christ could win in a three-way. There is, isn't there?
Florida is a competitive state, and I have to earn people's votes. I have to not just earn Republican votes, but Democrat votes, independent votes, no doubt about it. I think many of the policies being pursued today in Washington, D.C. threaten the things that make America exceptional. And I ran because I just don't see any other candidate in this race that will say these things, much less do anything about them. I feel like I'm the only one that will. That's my message. That was my message last May when the only people that thought I could win lived in my house, and most of them were under the age of 10. Or now that I'm in this three-way race. And my campaign is about this message, and hopefully enough people will agree with me and they'll elect me to the U.S. Senate.
So, but you agree that certainly at this point, it's a three-person race, you all look pretty even, that Governor Christ could pull this down.
Oh, this is going to be a competitive race. Florida's a competitive state. I always anticipated it was. But just remember, when I got in this race, I was 30 points down, so I'm not too concerned about polls. I think we'll be okay at the end of the day.
Why do you think the governor got out?
I don't know. That's a question he'll have to answer. I can tell you that for 12 months, I tried to engage Governor Christ in an ideas-based campaign. He spent over $1 million over the last month personally attacking me on the airwaves here in Florida. And when ultimately that didn't work, after those attacks didn't work, then he switched and decided to run this way.
The governor is going to go right after the middle. I don't think it was probably a coincidence that he started in St. Petersburg, even though he's from there, because that's where the independents are, along that corridor. What is it about Marco Rubio that you can sell to independents or to moderate Democrats? Because you are seen as the very conservative candidate. What are you moderate about?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I'm not ever run away from that title. I think that limited government conservatism is where most Americans are. I think that's mainstream American thought.
But where are you moderate? Like if you had to say, sit down with an independent, and it's, oh, this is this very conservative guy, I could never go for him. On what position do you take that's moderate on what issue?
Well, for example, I don't know what that means anymore to say that's moderate. I believe, for example, that the tax code should allow people to make enough money so that it encourages to reinvest their money to create more jobs for others. I think that's a very reasonable position. I think what's unreasonable is to expect people to invest in the American economy when our message is, be careful, like the president said the other day, some people make too much money and we're going to even it out. I mean, the president the other day stood on a stage and talked about how the fact that at some point you've made enough money. Well, who's he to decide that? I think that's where you get away from moderation. I think that's the kind of language that discourages people from investing in America's future.
Interpret for me, as it concerns the Republican Party, what the departure of Governor Christ means for Republicans.
I don't think it means anything for Republicans in Florida. A year ago at this time, there were some who believed that the way the Republican Party would become more successful was to be more like the Democrats. Charlie Crist believed that. I always felt that this country already had a Democrat Party. It didn't need two Democrat parties. The Republican Party needs to be not just the opposition. I don't want to go to Washington and be the opposition. I want to be part of the alternative. And ultimately why I think we've had success in the Republican primary so far is because we've offered not just the opportunity to be an opposition to the Obama administration, but an alternative on some very important issues.
Something more personal, the IRS has launched an investigation dealing with about $100,000 worth of spending while you were in the state legislature. What are they going to find insofar as concerns you?
Well, let me set the record straight on that. First of all, I've never been contacted by anyone about that. The only thing I've ever heard about any IRS is an anonymous source that spoke to one of the newspapers here. We've never been contacted by anybody. But I welcome the opportunity to set the record straight. It's pretty straightforward. I had an American Express card that I opened under my personal credit through the Republican Party for political expenditures, and we would use it for political expenditures. On some occasions, there were some personal expenses, and every month I would go through the statement, and I would pay those personal expenses directly to American Express, like countless other people across this country do as well. And that's what anyone who looks at this will find. Like I said, I'm open to any process that would help me set the record straight once and for all, but I'm not aware of any such process.
Do you consider yourself a Tea Party candidate?
I'm proud to be associated with many of the folks, all the folks in the Tea Party across the state of Florida are largely everyday people from all walks of life who have never participated in politics. Now, are there exceptions? Is there the one guy with a weird sign? Of course. You see that everywhere. You see that at sporting events, by the way. That doesn't make me stop being a fan of the Florida Gators or the Miami Dolphins. What it does tell you is that in the vast and enormous majority of the people you will find at a Tea Party are Republicans, Democrats, independents who have been largely uninvolved in politics up until now, who believe their country is headed in the wrong direction, and they no longer can stand by and watch while that happens and not be heard. And I congratulate them for their activism.
Jim DeMint, who you have said is the Republican that you admire the most, said at one point that he would rather have 30 Republicans in the Senate who believed in limited government, free market, free people, than 60 Republicans who don't have that set of beliefs. Do you agree with that?
Well, I would put it differently. I think I know what he's trying to say, and I would agree with this much, and that is I would rather be a principled party than a majority with no principles, because at one point the Republican Party seemed to have lost its way, and the result was disastrous for the party and for its future. I think we can accomplish both, by the way, and that's my goal, is that not only do I hope the Republican Party will be a movement organized around a very clear set of principles and ideas, the home of the limited government constitutional republic and free enterprise belief system, but that it will also be a majority that will be able to implement those things. The temptation in Washington seems to be, however, that once you win, many people forget everything they ran on and just try to figure out how can they stay there as long as possible, how can they stay in the majority as long as possible. I have very little interest in the game of politics. I want to serve for a period of time, and then I want to come home and help live under the laws that I helped pass or repeal.
You lead me to my last question, and that is, I don't know if you've heard the conversation. Talk to some Republicans dreaming, looking ahead, trying to find the new face of the Republican Party, and they see, you know, if Marco Rubio could win and get into the Senate and spend 2 years there, he could be our presidential candidate, a la Barack Obama. Have you heard that?
Well, that's both embarrassing and flattering, and but that's not going to happen. I'd like there to be the commissioner of the National Football League. That would be a better job, I think.
Why is it everybody wants that job?
It's a great job.
I'm sure it is, but you'd like to rule yourself out as a presidential candidate
Yes,
in 2012?
I'm not running for president.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
Marco
you.
Rubio. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.